Becoming Elizabeth is the story of King Henry VIII's second daughter, Elizabeth. So just a little bit of a background story on some of the major characters in this so you know who we're talking about and how they all relate to each other. So we have King Henry VIII, who everybody is familiar with. So we all know that he was married 6 times. His first wife, Catherine of Aragon, he and she had a daughter named Mary. She had a lot of pregnancies. Mary's their only living child, and they were married for a very long time. He never had any male heirs, which was clearly an issue for him because he needed a male heir to pass his throne on to. At the same time, he met Anne Boleyn while he was still married to Catherine. Anne and he started an affair, and he believed that he should leave his wife, Catherine, get married to Anne, and that he would then be able to have some male heirs. That did not work out, as we all know. He and Anne Boleyn only had one living child, and it was a daughter, and that is Elizabeth, right? So we have Catherine of Aragon and Henry, who have one daughter, Mary. We have Henry and Anne Boleyn, who have one daughter, and that's Elizabeth. His marriage with Anne Boleyn did not last long. We know that she was unfortunately beheaded. She was convicted of treason. He then moves on to Jane Seymour. He and Jane do have a son. They have one child. She ends up dying in childbirth, and that son is Edward. So these are the three children of Henry. These are the only three children of Henry VIII. And you will see in this series that the storyline is tied around these three children, at least initially, until we learn that Elizabeth ends up becoming his heir and goes on to rule England. Sorry if that's a spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't know the real story, but I assume if you're watching this and you're watching the video, you probably already know how this already pans out. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information. Oh, another thing I should add, two other major characters in this series are the Seymour brothers. So we have Edward Seymour and Thomas Seymour. They are the brothers of King Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour. So remember I said Jane Seymour was his third wife, and she gave him the son Edward. She had two brothers. Once she became in the king's favor, and then once they got married, he elevated her brothers to high levels within the court. And you'll see that they still have those positions, especially since they are the uncle to the prince, who is now the king. And we will see that these two brothers are actually volleying for power and using their nephew as the pawn. So let's just get right into the episode. So it starts in January 1547 when King Henry VIII has died, and we see there is a rush to the children, and they wake up Mary and Elizabeth and Edward to let them know that the king is dead. They pull them all together, and everybody acknowledges at that moment that Edward is now the king of England, right? At this time, he's probably and the historians will fact check me on this. He's a little boy, so I'm going to say like 8 or 9 years old. I don't know the exact age, but he's a child. And when this happens in the past, when a king would die and his child still wasn't of age, what they would do is assign a Lord Protector. It could be the queen, it could be the child's mother, or it could be other folks who will then be like the de facto ruler of the nation, of the country, until the prince, well, the king, comes of age. So in this case, we see as soon as Henry dies, and obviously this plotting had been going on in the later years of his life, the two Seymour brothers are on it, right? So Edward Seymour, he rushes to go and pick Edward up, and he takes him away. And he takes them to Whitehall Palace, and before they go into the council meeting, and the council is like 16 men who are pretty much like, I guess you would say, like a president's cabinet, right? All the folks who are running the country. And he pulls Edward aside and he tells him, listen, these 16 men have been assigned by your father to help you rule the nation, but it's a lot of voices and it's going to get confusing. So you need one voice to speak for you, and I can be that voice. And that is known as the Lord Protector. So essentially what he's doing is trying to become the ruler of England through his nephew. And Edward is a child, like I said, his father just died, it's just so much going on, and he agrees with it. This is his uncle. He believes that his uncle has his best interest at heart, and he goes for it. And this is where we see that the power play is going to start to begin, especially as it relates to Edward Seymour and Thomas Seymour, because they're brothers. They are both the uncle of the new king. So it would stand to reason that if the Lord Protectors would be the king's uncles, that they would share that responsibility. But, see, you see that there's strife between the two. Edward Seymour gets to King Edward before Thomas can, and he solidifies his role as the Lord Protector. So by the time Thomas gets to the meeting, he's pissed. He sees what's happening here, and he just leaves because I guess he sees that it's already done. In another scene, we see where Catherine Parr, who was King Henry's sixth wife, right? So I mentioned the first three, and then there's Catherine Howard, short-lived marriage, and then Anna Cleves, another short-lived marriage. And when he died, he was married to Catherine Parr. Now, Catherine never really was in love with him. This was a marriage that was orchestrated. She was in love with Thomas Seymour at the time, but obviously once she was forced to marry the king, all of that had to stop. So one of the first scenes we see her in, she's actually in bed having sex with Thomas Seymour. I mean, she didn't waste any time. She clearly, this is where her heart is. This is what she wanted to do. And now she is a free woman to do what she wants. And so we see what she wants to do is Thomas Seymour. So the two of them have been having conversations. I mean, they all know what's going on here. They know that what's at stake now that the king is dead. Catherine had been a stepmother to King Edward. His mom died in childbirth, so he never had his mother. And she was a mother figure to him. Like I said before, in some instances, when a king was to die before their heir reached the age of majority, the queen could then take over as queen regent. She could actually be like the Lord Protector because she would be ruling through her child. But in this case, Edward's uncle got to him first. So now she and Thomas see, all right, we're in a situation here. We've already missed our opportunity to get our hooks into Edward. What else can we do? Well, Catherine obviously has been thinking about this because she called out for Elizabeth, King Henry's second daughter, to come and live with her at Chelsea Manor. Now, this looks like a loving effort to bring her stepdaughter into her fold, they both having just had a loss. But it's bigger than that. And I'm not going to say that Catherine doesn't like or have any affinity for Elizabeth, but she's, in this series at least, she's doing this for power reasons. And she's figuring, let me get Elizabeth, who, although she is not a legitimate heir, she is the second daughter of the king. So, I mean, stranger things have happened as far as like who takes over for whom. So it's not far-fetched to believe that there is some value in having Elizabeth around and that Elizabeth may have some power in the future, which she ends up having, or just the fact that she is the daughter of the king and now the sister of the king. So they bring her over, and Elizabeth, she's also young and naive. In the series, she looks a little bit older, but I think in real life at this time when her father died, she might have been like 13, 14. I think she was in her preteens. So she's a young woman, and she receives Catherine's offer, and she comes to live with her at Chelsea Manor. And we see that Thomas Seymour, he's around a lot because, again, he's sleeping with Catherine Parr, right? And he starts flirting with Elizabeth. So you see the little flirtatious conversation. He pays her a lot of attention, probably more attention than she's ever received because as the princess, as the king's daughter, she was isolated, protected. You'll even see, her attendant is constantly still watching over her and, making sure that she's behaving properly and that making sure that there's no impropriety around her. So she's very insulated and protected. And we come to see that this is something that's frustrating for her. She's never been her own person. And not that she would be allowed to, her role and her rank, in the kingdom, it doesn't allow for that. But in this little flirtatious thing she has with Thomas, it makes her feel alive. I think it makes her feel attractive. I mean, he's a very handsome man, and now that her father's gone, I think she's starting to think about what her life looks like and is she going to have some more freedom to live the way she wants to. I don't think she has any thoughts of the throne, knowing that, she's been deemed illegitimate. Her brother is the rightful heir. He's a young boy. Even if not him, she has an older sister who would be next in line. So I don't think that she's thinking of these things. I think she's just really thinking of freedom and just getting away from all the corruption at court. I mean, she sees and she knows what how dangerous it could be, and how she's really just a pawn in the big picture. However, knowing this, she's still falling under Thomas's spell. She's flirting with her and she's liking it. And she goes so far as to even tell her attendant that she's considering marriage. Not that it was ever on the table, but I guess because she is just so caught up in the attention she's getting from him, that she's thinking that this is possible. And her attendant also affirms it because she can see the flirting. But what they don't know is that this is all a product of conversations of the plot that Catherine Parr and Thomas Seymour have come up with. I mean, they are using her for their benefit. I mean, I don't think they know exactly how to use her just yet, because the pieces are still falling into place, but they are keeping her close for that reason. And so all of this is part of the game. So she's falling for it. There is a monkey wrench though, because Catherine Catherine proposes to Thomas. This is the man she's wanted to be with from the beginning. And now they have an opportunity to be together because she's now widowed. And she also, like Elizabeth, is now feeling free to live her life. Before she married Henry, she was married to somebody else, and that was arranged by her family. So she's never really had her own choices. So this is her opportunity. They also need to, if they're going to do it, they need to do it fast, because the Lord Protector, Edward Seymour, Thomas's brother, is away in Scotland right now fighting a war. We're going to talk about that in a second. And the way things worked back then is any royal marriage needed to be approved by the king. And because she is the widow of the king, and because he is a noble, their marriage is not one that can happen without approval. Because Edward Seymour, Thomas's brother, is the Lord Protector, who pretty much is, acting as king right now, they would need his permission. And he and his brother don't like each other. They're not in a good place. And there's no way that his brother would approve this. So they take the opportunity to go and get married in secret while Edward is away in Scotland. So let's just talk a little bit about Scotland. So at one point, Edward lets, and there's two Edwards here. So there's Edward Seymour and then there's King Edward. So Edward Seymour, Lord Protector, Lord Somerset, he tells King Edward that, your marriage to Mary, Queen of Scots, has been planned. It was set up by your father, and we need to bring her to England so that we can fortify ourselves, because there have always been these wars, like between the three countries, between France, Scotland, and England. They've been constantly at war with each other for centuries. And what happens usually is two of the countries will get together and they'll leave the last one out. So they're constantly volleying for power, and they're using marriage as a way to bond the two countries and to isolate the third. So what they're trying to do is that again. And so if King Edward, the child, if he were to marry Mary, Queen of Scots, then that would solidify the relationship between Scotland and England and would leave France out. Now, if that doesn't happen and Scotland and France get together, that's going to leave England out. Edward Seymour is also concerned that because there is a child at the realm, when power gets exchanged, that's a very tenuous time, and other countries from the outside, this is an opportunity for war. This is an opportunity for people to siege power. So he wants to secure the throne. And he's figuring that, if we get married, we secure these two countries, Scotland will be an ally of ours. Then it'll also kind of solidify that this is a legitimate operation, that England is a force to be reckoned with, and that they're not weak. which may make some sense. But Edward, King Edward, is not happy about this because, again, he's a child. He's not thinking about marriage. And at the time, I think Mary, Queen of Scots, is probably like 5 years old. So, tell an 8 or 9 year old boy that he even has to like hang out with a 5 year old girl and he would lose his mind. So now you're telling this young boy, who technically is king, but he's still a child, that he has to marry this little girl he's never met. But Edward convinces him, tells him, listen, we need to go and get her, and knowing that this is going to create some kind of war. And King Edward is like, we don't have to, we can't afford this. A is something I don't want to do, and B, we can't afford this. But Lord Somerset insists, and he heads up to Scotland to go and get Mary, Queen of Scots, and bring her to England. So it's while he's away that Catherine Parr and Thomas Seymour are able to get married. He goes up there, they have a battle, they think they have won, or at least they state that they have won. However, France has smuggled Mary, Queen of Scots, away while they were having this battle. So it was a pirate's victory. They went up there and they gained nothing. They lost men, they lost resources, and it was all for nothing. So at the same time, while they're away, Edward gets the word that they're all of, the battle has been won, or the war has been won, not knowing that Mary, Queen of Scots, has been sent away to France. So he has a ball, and they have a party essentially to celebrate the win, but there was no win. So when Edward Seymour comes back and he tells King Edward what happened, King Edward is pissed because he feels like he's been made a fool of and he's embarrassed. He had said initially that there's nothing he didn't want. He said that we couldn't afford the war. He went along with it, and they spent all this money and all this effort, celebrated as if it happened, and it didn't. So he feels foolish. So we see where he's starting to maybe come into his own, find his voice a little bit, and perhaps see his uncle for who he is. We're not sure yet, and I'm totally speculating because this is only the first episode, but I'm hoping and I'm thinking that maybe this is where maybe there's a little bit of crack in this relationship, and he's realizing that maybe his uncle doesn't have his best interest at heart, or maybe he should start asserting his own power as king. Another scene worth noting is we see that Mary, King Henry's first daughter, his daughter with Catherine of Aragon, is at court, and she has having a conversation with the Spanish ambassador. We see the ambassador is putting a bug in Mary's ear about, why is Edward the heir? Should this not be you? You are the legitimate heir. You are his firstborn, blah, blah, blah. So we see him just kind of putting that out there. But at this point in time, Mary's not trying to hear it. She just says that Edward is the king. So I imagine that this will resurface because obviously the scene is in this series for a reason. And we'll see that there's going to be some tension later. Either she will be, she'll keep getting influence from Spain, from maybe the emperor, from this ambassador, and maybe she'll start to think about, why am I not the next in line, or I don't know. So again, speculation, but that scene was in the episode for a reason. So we're seeing that there are other power plays at play. Worth mentioning is Lady Jane Grey. So this is a little girl. She's about the same age as Edward. We see scenes with her father, Henry Grey, feeling like he has been feeling insulted that he and his daughter, Lady Jane Grey, are not as close or are not as close proximity to the king as they should be, because Lady Jane Grey is of royal blood and she is related to the king and his father. And I'll explain how they're related, why she's in the line of succession. So we have King Henry VIII, the original character, right? And he had two sisters. One of his sisters' names is Mary. Mary was married twice. Her second husband's name is Charles Brandon, who was a friend of the king. Charles and Mary had a daughter named Frances. Frances married Henry Grey, and they have a daughter named Jane, and that is Lady Jane Grey. So technically, she is King Henry VIII's grand niece, and she is King Edward's cousin. So that's where her line of succession comes into play. She mentions that at some point, Thomas Seymour has a conversation with King Edward, and he brings her to his attention and lets her know that, she's here, she's English, she comes from a good family. You might want to consider her, like maybe there's a match there. Of course, Edward poo-poos it because he's not interested. I mean, he's not interested in girls, period. He vaguely remembers her from interactions, but he's not really thinking about this. But Thomas Seymour is thinking about Jane as another pawn for he and Catherine Parr's power play. So what he does is he moves Lady Jane Grey into Chelsea Manor to live with Catherine Parr and Elizabeth. When she first gets there, she has a conversation with Elizabeth. Elizabeth is confused as to why she's there. And Lady Jane Grey, I mean, she was out of pocket. You know, she came in really talking a lot of smack, saying that, you know, she's in the line of succession, saying that Mary and Elizabeth are bastards, saying that, you know, she is related to the king. So pretty much in there pumping her chest as to why she's there and why she might have a greater claim on the throne than Elizabeth. But she's a child, and I imagine these are things that she's been told. I imagine these are things that her father has drilled into her head, and she's just repeating what she's been told. I don't think that she means harm, but, you know, clearly her message and her delivery is off-putting. Elizabeth goes back to Catherine Parr to complain, like, why is this girl here? Why do you have me living in this house with this brat? She's talking smack to me and blah, blah, blah. At the same time, Thomas Seymour walks into the room and he lets Elizabeth know that it was his decision to bring Lady Jane Grey there. And because she is smitten with Thomas, she calms down and she receives it. But this is all just part of the big power play. And I suppose what Thomas and Catherine are doing is hedging their bets. You know, they brought Elizabeth in. They're hoping that maybe, you know, Jane will come in handy at some point. But they are definitely not on the up and up. They have something up their sleeve. And I'm not feeling any way about this. Like, I don't feel like they're the villains, you know, because they're all pretty much doing it. And, you know, at that time, you did have to solidify your role in court and your position so that you could remain in favor, so that, you know, you could maintain your lifestyle, so that, you know, you can secure your future for yourself and your children and your heirs. So I get why they're all doing it. I mean, the court is just an ugly place where these kind of things happen. So we see that moving forward, this flirtatious thing between Elizabeth and Thomas Seymour is going to continue. She was upset to learn that they got married, but she seemed to be more upset with Catherine than she is with Thomas because clearly she has a crush on him, and they are using this to their advantage. So what did I think about this? I thought it was a really good first episode. I thought the acting was good. The plotting, they're moving pretty quickly. Sometimes in these type of period pieces, they drag the story on. But I mean, we all want to see, the story is called Becoming Elizabeth. So we want to see how she comes to be Elizabeth first and how she comes to be this force and to be the first female monarch of England. So we're moving through it quickly, and I think they're also doing a good job for people who really haven't watched some of the other series or some of the movies and stuff. So you kind of get a sense. It feels like a good standalone series. Like even if you aren't kind of steeped in the storyline and the history, you can pick it up and it's interesting, and it's got enough of the, you know, salacious soap opera stuff, but it also stays true to the history. And yeah, I think I'm excited to watch it. I will review episodes 2 and 3 probably together because I'm a little bit behind. I'm just doing this first episode, even though the show started 2 weeks ago. But to all of my Tudor fans and all of my folks who watched you know, the White Princess and the Spanish Princess and all those other period pieces, I'm hoping that you will watch this and engage, and we can engage in a conversation about everything that's happening and all the nuances of the period and the characters and all that good stuff. And I will be back next week to review episodes 2 and 3. Thanks for watching. Oh, and do not forget to like and do not forget to subscribe so that you will get a notification when the new videos go up. And then you can watch my other videos that have reviewed the Spanish Princess and the Gilded Age and other period pieces and things of that nature. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye.